In the vast darkness of space, where civilizations rise and fall like waves against cosmic shores, there exists a universal truth that every species learns eventually. Some battles are won not by superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but by the sheer, terrifying unpredictability of those who refuse to surrender. The Korthak Mercenary Guild had carved their reputation across 17 star systems with precision and ruthless efficiency. Their biomechanical warriors were legends of destruction, their tactical superiority unquestioned. For 3 centuries, no military force had successfully stood against them when they took a contract. Governments paid their astronomical fees not just for victory, but for the swift, clean elimination of problems that conventional armies couldn't handle. But legends like stars sometimes burn out in spectacular fashion. When the distress signal reached Earth from the human colony of New Geneva, it carried more than just a cry for help. It carried the coordinates to humanity's first real test among the galactic community. The Korthak had been hired to cleanse the planet of its stubborn human infestation, and their reputation suggested it would be over within days. What the galaxy didn't know was that humans had a reputation too, it just hadn't been written yet. In the shadows of Earth's most classified military installations, a different kind of warrior was preparing for deployment. They didn't wear biomechanical armor or carry plasma cannons that could level city blocks. They carried something far more dangerous: the accumulated fury of a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war against their own kind. The Korthak expected another easy payday. Instead, they were about to discover why, in the ancient human language of Latin, the phrase "si vis pacem para bellum" translated to "if you want peace, prepare for war." Some lessons in the galaxy are learned through diplomacy. Others are carved into memory with blood and fire. This is the story of how the most feared mercenary force in known space learned to fear something new. The chrome and obsidian halls of the Korthak command ship Bone Render hummed with the low-frequency vibrations of a vessel designed for war. Commander Thexkar stood before the holographic display, his 6-foot frame encased in the ceremonial black armor that marked his rank within the Mercenary Guild. The biomechanical implants along his spine pulsed with a soft blue light, interfacing directly with the ship's tactical systems as he reviewed the contract details. New Geneva, a human colony world on the edge of the Outer Rim territories. Population, approximately 2 million. Primary industries, agricultural production and rare mineral extraction. Military capabilities, minimal. The contract was straightforward, submitted through the usual channels by a consortium of Vaxillian trade corporations who wanted the planet's resources without the inconvenience of human occupation. Thexkar's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. Humans. The galaxy's newest members, barely 2 centuries since their first contact with galactic civilization. They had spread quickly through the Outer Rim, establishing colonies with the stubborn persistence that seemed characteristic of their species. But persistence meant little against the Korthak. "Status report," Thexkar commanded, his voice carrying the artificial harmonics generated by his throat implants. Subcommander Vektal materialized from the shadows near the tactical station, his form more heavily modified than his superiors. Where Thexkar maintained some semblance of his original Korthak physiology, Vektal had embraced full biomechanical integration. His left arm had been replaced entirely with a plasma cannon assembly, and his skull bore the distinctive ridge modifications that housed advanced targeting systems. "Fleet deployment is complete, Commander," Vektal reported. 12 assault cruisers, 48 strike fighters, and 3,000 ground assault units. The Human Colonial Defense Force consists of approximately 500 militia members equipped with projectile weapons and basic energy shields. Resistance is expected to last no more than 6 hours. Thexkar nodded, accessing the mission files directly through his neural interface. The payment from the Vaxillian Consortium was substantial, enough to fund the Guild for 3 standard cycles. It would be the easiest money the Korthak had ever earned. "What intelligence do we have on human military capabilities?" Thexkar asked, though he expected little of significance. Humans were known for their crude but effective projectile weapons, their inability to master proper energy shielding, and their tendency toward emotional decision-making that made them predictable in combat. Vektal's optical implants flickered as he accessed the data. Limited, Commander. Humans have been involved in minor conflicts with Zeltharian raiders and Quantum Syndicate pirates, but nothing requiring significant military response. Their technology appears to be approximately 300 years behind galactic standard. They still rely heavily on kinetic weapons and chemical propellants. Primitive, Texcar mused. Any notable tactical innovations? None documented. Human military doctrine appears to emphasize small unit tactics and individual initiative over coordinated fleet actions. Psychological profile suggests they are prone to panic when faced with superior firepower. The commander's mandibles clicked again. It was almost insulting how straightforward this contract would be. The Korthak had built their reputation destroying civilizations that had mastered energy manipulation, quantum computing, and bioengineering. The humans of New Geneva would be little more than target practice. Initiate approach vector, Thexcar ordered. Signal the fleet. We begin orbital bombardment in 18 standard hours. Meanwhile, in the depths of space between star systems, a different kind of preparation was taking place aboard the Earth Confederation Navy vessel Retribution. The ship was smaller than the Korthak fleet, its hull painted in the matte black that absorbed sensor sweeps and made it nearly invisible against the cosmic void. Unlike the ornate displays of alien technology, everything about the Retribution spoke to function over form. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the ship's briefing room, studying the holographic display that showed New Geneva's solar system. Her 40-year career in Earth's military had taken her through conflicts that didn't officially exist, operations that were never recorded, and battles that the public would never know had been fought. At 55, she was older than most frontline officers, but her presence commanded respect from every person in the room. Intelligence confirms Korthak fleet deployment, reported Major James Morrison, the ship's tactical officer. 12 heavy cruisers, standard mercenary configuration, estimated 3,000 ground troops. What do we know about their capabilities? Chen asked. Biomechanical enhancement is standard. Enhanced strength, speed, and reaction time. Integrated weapon systems and armor plating that can deflect most energy weapons. They've never faced human military forces in a serious engagement. Chen nodded. And they never will, if we do our job right. The captain turned to address the 12 figures seated around the briefing table. Each wore the unmarked black uniform of Earth's Special Operations Command, but their weapons and equipment told a different story. These were not regular soldiers. They were specialists, each one hand-picked for skills that couldn't be learned in conventional military training. Ladies and gentlemen, Chen began, you are about to become the galaxy's introduction to human warfare. Everything we know about the Korthak suggests they rely on overwhelming technological superiority and coordinated assault tactics. They expect their enemies to fight by galactic standards, fleet engagements, formal battle lines, predictable responses to superior firepower. She gestured to the display, which shifted to show tactical schematics of Korthak military doctrine. They've never encountered an enemy that refuses to fight fair. Sergeant First Class Marcus Rodriguez, the team's demolitions expert, leaned forward. What's our objective, Captain? Are we talking about a direct confrontation? Negative, Chen replied. Your mission is infiltration and disruption. The Korthak expect to face a colonial militia. Instead, they're going to discover that humanity has been preparing for this kind of war for centuries. The display changed again, showing detailed schematics of Korthak vessels and equipment. Lieutenant Commander Price has spent the last 6 months analyzing every piece of Korthak technology we could acquire through diplomatic channels. Lieutenant, your assessment? Commander Jessica Price stood, her cybernetics expertise evident in the interface ports along her temples that allowed direct connection to Earth's most advanced computer systems. Korthak biomechanical systems are impressive but standardized. They rely on quantum-encrypted command and control networks, bio-neural integration, and energy-based weapons systems, all of which means they have specific vulnerabilities that human technology can exploit. Explain, Chen prompted. Their biomechanical enhancements make them stronger and faster, but they also create dependencies. Cut their connection to the command network and their coordination falls apart. Disrupt their power systems and their enhanced capabilities become dead weight. Most importantly, their psychological conditioning assumes technological superiority. They've never had to adapt to an enemy that can turn their own advantages against them. Staff Sergeant Kim Nakamura, the team's communications specialist, raised her hand. What about their reputation? Everything we've heard suggests the Korthak don't retreat from contracts. Chen's smile was cold. Then they're about to learn something new about themselves. The captain activated a new section of the display showing detailed plans for what could only be described as asymmetric warfare taken to its logical extreme. The Korthak are used to winning through superior firepower and coordinated assault. We're going to teach them about human ingenuity, human adaptability, and human stubbornness. Sir, interjected Corporal David Kim, the team's sniper, are we talking about a stand-up fight? We're talking about making them wish they'd never heard of humans, Chen replied. The colonial militia on New Geneva will put up token resistance, enough to make the Korthak think they're winning. Meanwhile, you will be inserted covertly to conduct operations designed to destabilize their entire command structure. The display showed detailed insertion routes, target priorities, and contingency plans that spoke to months of preparation. Your equipment has been specially designed to exploit Korthak weaknesses. Your tactics have been developed specifically to counter their advantages. Most importantly, your mission is to demonstrate that human beings don't fight wars the way the galaxy expects. Technical Sergeant Lisa Park, the team's medic and biochemist, studied the intelligence reports. What about backup? If this goes wrong, we're facing 3,000 enhanced soldiers with no support. You won't be alone, Chen said, but your backup won't come in the form the Korthak expect. The galaxy is about to learn that humans have been preparing for war since before we had spaceflight. They're going to discover what happens when a species that evolved through constant conflict decides to stop playing by someone else's rules. The briefing continued for another 3 hours, covering everything from individual equipment specifications to macro-level strategic objectives. By the time it concluded, every member of the team understood that they weren't just soldiers on a mission, they were representatives of humanity's first real test among the galactic community. As the team dispersed to final preparations, Captain Chen remained in the briefing room, studying the tactical displays. In 18 hours, the Korthak would begin their assault on New Geneva, confident in their reputation and superior technology. They expected another routine contract, another easy victory to add to their legend. Instead, they were about to encounter something the galaxy had never seen before. Human Special Operations Forces, operating without the constraints of civilized warfare. The Korthak had built their reputation by being better soldiers than their enemies. They were about to discover the difference between soldiers and warriors. The Retribution continued its silent approach toward New Geneva, its crew preparing for an operation that would either establish humanity as a force to be respected in galactic politics or demonstrate the limits of human military capability. Either way, the Korthak Mercenary Guild was about to learn why Earth's military specialists had a saying. The enemy gets a vote. In the depths of space, two forces were converging on a confrontation that neither fully understood. The Korthak expected technological superiority to prevail, as it always had. The humans expected something different entirely, the complete redefinition of what it meant to wage war among the stars. The galaxy was about to receive an education in human military doctrine, delivered by experts in applied violence who had spent their entire careers preparing for exactly this kind of impossible odds. The Korthak had never lost a contract. Humanity had never lost a war. Something had to give. New Geneva hung in space ahead of them, its blue-green surface innocent of the violence about to unfold in its vicinity. Within hours, it would become the testing ground for two fundamentally different approaches to warfare. Only one would prove superior. The question wasn't which side would win. It was whether the Korthak would survive long enough to understand why they had lost. The first phase of the Korthak assault unfolded exactly as planned. Thexkar watched from the command bridge of the Bone Render as his fleet moved into orbital position around New Geneva, their plasma cannons charging for the preliminary bombardment that would destroy the planet's defensive installations. The human colonial government had been broadcasting surrender offers for the past 6 hours, pathetic attempts at negotiation that only confirmed their weakness. Defensive installations eliminated, Vectal reported, his biomechanical implants interfacing directly with the tactical display. Human orbital stations destroyed. Colonial militia has retreated to prepared positions in the planetary capital. Vexkar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Resistance level? Minimal. Some scattered plasma rifle fire, basic kinetic weapons. Nothing that penetrated our shield systems. The humans appear to be following standard colonial defense protocols: retreat to fortified positions and attempt to delay the inevitable. Casualty report? 0. The humans have not inflicted any significant damage to our forces. It was proceeding exactly as every other Korthak contract. The client had been correct in their assessment. Humans were simply another primitive species that had expanded beyond their military capabilities. Thexkar began calculating how quickly they could complete the ground assault and move on to the next contract. "Begin ground deployment," he ordered. "I want this concluded within 12 standard hours." What Thexkar didn't know was that every aspect of the human resistance had been carefully choreographed. 500 kilometers below the Korthak fleet, Colonel Janet Reynolds coordinated the colonial militia's tactical withdrawal from her command post deep beneath New Geneva's capital city. Her 40-year career in the Earth Confederation Army had included more classified operations than most generals, but this was the most important mission she'd ever commanded. Sector 7 reports Korthak advance units have taken the outer defensive perimeter, reported her communications officer. They're proceeding exactly as projected. Reynolds nodded, studying the three-dimensional tactical display that showed Korthak positions throughout the city. Any deviation from expected patterns? Negative, Colonel. They're following standard mercenary doctrine: establish orbital supremacy, eliminate static defenses, deploy ground forces in overwhelming numbers. They expect to be in control of the planet within hours. Then they're about to get their first lesson in human military planning, Reynolds replied. Signal all units. Begin Phase 2. 20 kilometers above the planet's surface, the Earth's Special Operations Team prepared for insertion aboard a stealth transport that was invisible to Korthak sensors. The vessel had been designed specifically for this mission, incorporating technology that exploited gaps in alien detection systems that no galactic species had ever bothered to address. Sergeant First Class Marcus Rodriguez checked his equipment one final time, paying special attention to the devices that would have seemed primitive to any galactic observer. While the Korthak relied on energy-based weapons and biomechanical enhancement, Rodriguez carried explosives based on chemical reactions that had been perfected through centuries of human warfare. Compounds that could disrupt biomechanical systems in ways that energy shields couldn't prevent. 2 minutes to insertion point, announced the pilot. Korthak patrols are maintaining predicted patterns. You'll have a clear drop zone. Staff Sergeant Kim Nakamura activated her communications array, establishing encrypted links with resistance cells throughout New Geneva. All networks are active, Sergeant. We'll have real-time intelligence on Korthak positions throughout the operation. Lieutenant Commander Jessica Price reviewed the data streams flowing through her cybernetic interfaces. Korthak command and control systems are operating on quantum frequencies 7.3 through 9.1 terahertz. I'm reading their entire tactical network. Can you disrupt it? Asked Rodriguez. Not yet, but I can monitor everything they're doing. More importantly, I can feed false information into their system when the time comes. The transport shuddered slightly as it entered the planet's atmosphere, maintaining stealth protocols that kept it invisible to Korthak detection systems. Below them, the planetary capital showed the signs of recent bombardment, destroyed defensive installations, scattered fires, and the organized movement of Korthak ground forces establishing control points throughout the urban area. Visual confirmation of target zones, reported Corporal David Kim through his sniper scope. Korthak forces are deployed in standard patterns, command posts established at predicted locations. They're not adapting their tactics for human resistance. They're treating this like every other contract. Technical Sergeant Lisa Park monitored the biosignatures of Korthak soldiers through sensors designed to analyze their enhanced physiology, confirming intelligence assessments. Their biomechanical systems operate on standardized power distribution networks. Disruption points identified. The transport reached the drop zone, a section of the city that appeared to be under complete Korthak control but was actually honeycombed with concealed resistance positions. The Earth Special Operations Team deployed with precision that spoke to hundreds of hours of mission-specific training, each member moving to predetermined positions that would give them maximum tactical advantage. Rodriguez established his base of operations in the ruins of a manufacturing complex that provided access to the underground tunnel network connecting major Korthak positions. His demolitions expertise would be crucial to the mission's success, but not in the way the Korthak would expect. Instead of confronting their superior armor and shielding directly, he would target the infrastructure they depended on: power distribution networks, communication relays, and the biomechanical integration systems that made their soldiers so formidable. Nakamura took position in the remains of a communications tower that gave her access to both human resistance networks and Korthak communication frequencies. Her role was to coordinate the complex deception that would convince the Korthak they were facing conventional resistance, while Earth specialists prepared their real attack. Price found cover in a data processing center, where her cybernetic capabilities could interface with the local computer networks. From there, she could monitor Korthak tactical systems while preparing the electronic warfare campaign that would turn their technological superiority into a liability. Kim established his sniper position in a partially collapsed office building that provided clear sightlines to 3 major Korthak command posts. His role wasn't to engage in traditional sniper warfare. His targets would be much more specific and tactical. Park positioned herself near the central medical facility where captured human civilians were being processed. Her biochemistry expertise would be essential to the mission's final phase, when the team would need to demonstrate human capabilities that the galaxy had never encountered. As the team established their positions, the Korthak ground assault continued according to their standard operational procedures. Commander Thexkar monitored the operation from orbit, satisfied that everything was proceeding exactly as planned. His forces had secured all major strategic points, eliminated organized resistance, and were beginning the systematic processing of the human population that would complete the contract. "Status report," he commanded. "All objectives secured," Vectal reported. "Human resistance has collapsed. We're proceeding with final phase operations. Casualty assessment: 0 confirmed casualties. Minor damage to 3 assault units from human kinetic weapons, but nothing significant. The humans appear to have exhausted their military capabilities." Thexkar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Another successful contract, completed with the efficiency that had made the Korthak Guild the most feared mercenary force in the galaxy. The Vaxilian Consortium would be pleased with the speed of the operation, and the Guild's reputation would be enhanced by another flawless victory. But in the ruins of New Geneva's industrial sector, Sergeant Rodriguez was making final preparations for an assault that would shatter every assumption the Korthak had made about human warfare. His explosives weren't designed to breach their armor or overcome their shields. Instead, they were specifically engineered to disrupt the biomechanical integration that made Korthak soldiers so formidable. Human military scientists had spent months analyzing every piece of Korthak technology they could acquire, identifying the precise frequencies and chemical reactions that would interfere with alien biomechanical systems. The devices Rodriguez carried weren't weapons in the conventional sense. They were targeted disruption systems designed to turn Korthak enhancements into liabilities. "All units, this is Rodriguez," he whispered into his tactical communication system. "Beginning Phase 3 in 5 minutes. Everyone knows their targets." Throughout the city, the Earth Special Operations Team prepared to demonstrate capabilities that the Korthak had never encountered. They weren't planning to fight fair. They weren't planning to engage in the kind of honorable combat that galactic civilizations expected. They were planning to conduct warfare the way humans had been conducting it for millennia, with every trick, deception, and dirty tactic that superior numbers and technology couldn't counter. The Korthak expected to face a defeated enemy. Instead, they were about to discover that humans had never learned how to quit. More importantly, they were about to learn that Earth's military forces had been preparing for exactly this kind of asymmetric conflict since long before humanity had developed spaceflight. In his command post aboard the Bone Render, Thexkar reviewed the tactical display one final time before authorizing the mission completion protocols. Everything indicated a standard victory against primitive opposition. The human colony of New Geneva had fallen exactly as predicted, with minimal resistance and no significant tactical innovations. He had no way of knowing that the real battle was about to begin, and that his reputation for invincibility was about to encounter something the galaxy had never seen: human special operations forces operating without any intention of fighting by civilized rules. The Korthak had built their legend by being better soldiers than their enemies. They were about to discover the difference between being a soldier and being a warrior, and why humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of making impossible victories look inevitable. Rodriguez checked his chronometer. 3 minutes until Phase 3 commenced. Around the city, his teammates were making final preparations for an operation that would either establish humanity as a serious military force in galactic politics or demonstrate the limits of human ingenuity when faced with superior alien technology. Either way, the Korthak Mercenary Guild was about to learn that their reputation for invincibility had just encountered its first real test. The question wasn't whether humans could win against superior numbers and technology. The question was whether the Korthak would survive the lesson humanity was about to deliver. In the depths of New Geneva's underground tunnel system, Colonel Reynolds monitored the deployment of Earth's special forces while maintaining the illusion of a defeated colonial militia. Her role was to ensure that the Korthak remained confident in their victory right up until the moment they discovered that victory was an illusion. "All units report ready," she whispered into her command communicator. "The real war begins now." The first indication that something had gone wrong came when Korthak Assault Unit 7 simply vanished from the tactical network. Sub-Commander Vectal stared at his biomechanical interface display, mandibles clicking in confusion as he tried to re-establish contact with the 12-soldier patrol that had been securing the industrial sector. One moment they were reporting normal status, the next their biosignatures had disappeared entirely from the command grid. "Communication malfunction," he concluded, routing additional bandwidth to the sector. "Assault Unit 7, respond." Silence. "Assault Unit 15, investigate Unit 7's last known position." Vectal ordered. "Report any irregularities." What Assault Unit 15 found defied every tactical assumption the Korthak had made about human capabilities. 12 biomechanically enhanced soldiers, each weighing over 300 pounds in full armor, had been systematically neutralized without firing a single shot. Their weapons were intact, their armor undamaged, but their biomechanical systems had been completely shut down by some form of targeted electromagnetic pulse that their shields hadn't even detected. "This is impossible," muttered Assault Unit 15's leader, Wektan, as he examined the bodies. "Their enhancement systems are completely dead, but there's no evidence of energy weapon discharge. What kind of primitive technology could do this?" The answer came in the form of a small device attached to the underside of a piece of debris. A human electromagnetic pulse generator designed specifically to disrupt biomechanical integration systems. It was crude by galactic standards, relying on simple electronic components and chemical explosives rather than sophisticated energy manipulation. But it worked with terrifying efficiency against enemies who had never encountered such primitive yet effective tactics. Wilcothan never had a chance to report his discovery. Staff Sergeant Kim Nakamura's communication disruption package activated simultaneously with Sergeant Rodriguez's second wave of EMP devices, cutting Assault Unit 15 off from the command network just as their biomechanical systems failed. 15 more Korthak soldiers joined their companions in technological unconsciousness, their enhanced bodies reduced to dead weight by weapons that shouldn't have been able to penetrate their defenses. From his sniper position, Corporal David Kim monitored Korthak response patterns through a scope that used human optical technology to target vulnerabilities in alien armor systems. His weapon wasn't designed to penetrate Korthak shields. Instead, it fired specially designed rounds that would attach tracking devices to enemy soldiers, allowing the team to monitor their movements and predict their tactical responses. "Rodriguez, this is Kim," he whispered into his tactical communicator. "Korthak Command is routing reinforcements to your sector. 2 full assault units, 36 soldiers." "Copy that," Rodriguez replied, activating the next phase of his demolitions plan. "Let them come. We'll give them something to think about." The trap Rodriguez had prepared was a masterpiece of human engineering applied to alien warfare. Instead of trying to match Korthak firepower directly, he had turned their own tactical doctrines against them. The route the reinforcements would take led through a section of the industrial complex that had been carefully prepared with hidden EMP devices, structural charges designed to channel the blast effects in specific directions, and communication jammers that would isolate the Korthak soldiers from their command network. When the reinforcements arrived, they found what appeared to be evidence of a fierce battle. Scattered debris, damage patterns consistent with human kinetic weapons. and the unmistakable signs of a desperate last stand by colonial militia forces. What they didn't find was any trace of the devices that Rodriguez had spent hours positioning throughout the area. "Spread out and secure the perimeter," ordered Unit Commander Zex Val, his biomechanical enhancements interfacing with the local tactical network. "Maintain communication protocols. These humans are more resourceful than anticipated." It was exactly the response Rodriguez had been hoping for. As the Korthak soldiers spread out to investigate the apparent battle site, they moved into positions where his EMP devices could neutralize their biomechanical systems without damaging their armor or weapons. The electromagnetic pulse that followed was invisible, silent, and utterly devastating to enemies whose entire tactical doctrine depended on enhanced physical capabilities. 36 Korthak soldiers collapsed simultaneously, their biomechanical systems completely disabled by technology they couldn't detect or defend against. Their armor remained intact. Their weapons remained functional. But the soldiers inside had been reduced to ordinary biological entities trapped inside equipment they could no longer control. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Jessica Price was conducting her own form of warfare from her position in the data processing center. Her cybernetic interfaces allowed her to monitor Korthak communication networks in real time. But more importantly, they gave her the ability to inject false information into their tactical systems. The data streams flowing through Korthak command networks told a story of escalating human resistance, reports of heavy casualties among colonial militia forces, successful suppression of all organized opposition, and the systematic elimination of remaining pockets of resistance. Every piece of information Price fed into their system reinforced the Korthak belief that they were winning a conventional engagement against primitive opponents. But the reality was very different. While the Korthak command remained confident in their tactical superiority, their actual ground forces were being systematically neutralized by an enemy that refused to fight according to galactic conventions. Each assault unit that went missing was explained away as routine communication problems or minor technical difficulties. The truth, that human special forces were conducting surgical strikes against targets the Korthak hadn't even considered vulnerable, never made it through the carefully manipulated information networks. "Price to all units," she whispered into her tactical communicator. "Korthak Command is routing additional forces to investigate the industrial sector disappearances. Estimate 60 soldiers in 3 assault units, supported by light armor." "Copy that," replied Rodriguez. "How much time before they arrive?" 20 minutes. "But I'm reading something else on their networks. They're starting to suspect that their missing units might have encountered organized resistance. They're beginning to adapt their tactics." It was exactly what the Earth team had been expecting. Human military doctrine assumed that any competent enemy would eventually recognize patterns and adapt their responses. The key to successful special operations wasn't to maintain the same tactics indefinitely. It was to stay one step ahead of enemy adaptation while systematically degrading their capabilities. Technical Sergeant Lisa Park had been monitoring the situation from her position near the medical facility, but her role was about to become crucial. As the Korthak began to suspect organized resistance, they would start implementing enhanced security protocols that might make the team's current tactics less effective. But Park had been preparing for exactly that possibility. "Rodriguez, this is Park," she transmitted. "I'm in position to deploy chemical countermeasures. If the Korthak start using enhanced detection systems, I can neutralize their biomechanical sensor capabilities." "Negative for now," Rodriguez replied. "Hold your position until we see how they adapt to the industrial sector losses. The chemical weapons Park carried weren't designed to kill or injure. They were specifically formulated to disrupt the biological components of Korthak enhancement systems." Human biochemists had spent months analyzing alien physiology, identifying compounds that would interfere with biomechanical integration without causing permanent harm to the organic components. It was another example of human technological innovation applied to warfare in ways the galaxy had never encountered. From orbit, Commander Thexkar was beginning to realize that something was seriously wrong with the New Geneva operation. 3 assault units had failed to report in, communication with multiple ground positions had been disrupted, and the tactical network was showing inconsistent data about the progress of the ground assault. "Vectal, I want a complete status report on all ground operations," he ordered. Sir, we're experiencing some communication difficulties with units operating in the industrial sector, likely caused by human electronic warfare capabilities. Electronic warfare? From a colonial militia? It's possible they have more sophisticated equipment than initially assessed, but overall tactical situation remains stable. Resistance is being systematically eliminated according to operational parameters. Thexkar's mandibles clicked in irritation. The Korthak Guild's reputation was built on flawless execution of contracts, and any deviation from predicted timelines was unacceptable. But the information flowing through his command network suggested that despite minor complications, the operation was proceeding successfully. What Thexkar didn't know was that every piece of information he was receiving had been carefully filtered through Lieutenant Commander Price's electronic warfare systems. The real tactical situation was that nearly 100 Korthak soldiers had been neutralized without inflicting a single casualty on human forces, and Earth's Special Operations Team was preparing to escalate their campaign against alien forces that still believed they were fighting primitive opponents. "All units, this is Rodriguez," he whispered into his tactical communicator. "Phase 4 begins in 10 minutes. We're about to show the Korthak what human warfare really looks like. The next phase of the operation would take the conflict to a level that would fundamentally challenge everything the galaxy believed about military technology and tactical doctrine. The Korthak expected to face enemies who fought according to established conventions. Energy weapons against energy shields, technological superiority determining victory, and combat conducted according to civilized rules of engagement. Instead, they were about to encounter warfare as humans had developed it. Creative, adaptable, and utterly ruthless in its exploitation of enemy assumptions and vulnerabilities. The Earth Special Operations Team wasn't trying to match Korthak technology. They were demonstrating that superior technology meant nothing against enemies who refused to fight fair. Staff Sergeant Nakamura finished uploading the last of her communication viruses into the Korthak Tactical Network. "Rodriguez, I've got complete control of their local communications. I can route their reinforcements wherever you want them." "Outstanding," Rodriguez replied, studying his tactical display. "Send them to Grid 7 Alpha. We've got a special reception prepared." Grid 7 Alpha was a section of the manufacturing complex that had been completely rebuilt according to human military engineering principles. What appeared to be a standard industrial facility was actually a carefully designed kill zone equipped with EMP devices, structural charges, communication jammers, and chemical dispersal systems that could neutralize Korthak biomechanical enhancements in multiple ways simultaneously. More importantly, it was designed to look like the site of a major human defensive position that had been recently overrun. The Korthak reinforcements would expect to find evidence of heavy fighting and the elimination of organized resistance. Instead, they would find themselves trapped in a facility designed specifically to exploit every vulnerability in their technology and tactical doctrine. "Kim, I need target designation for Phase 4 deployment," Rodriguez requested. "Copy. I've got eyes on 3 Korthak command posts and 2 communication relays, all targets marked for simultaneous engagement." The plan they were implementing represented years of preparation by Earth's most classified military research programs. Every aspect of Korthak technology, every element of their tactical doctrine, and every assumption they made about inferior enemies had been analyzed and countered. The Human Special Forces team wasn't improvising. They were executing a carefully planned campaign designed to systematically destroy the Korthak Guild's reputation for invincibility. But the most important element of their strategy wasn't technological or tactical. It was psychological. The Korthak had never encountered an enemy that could neutralize their technological advantages, while remaining completely invisible to their detection systems. They had never faced opponents who could turn their own tactical networks against them. Most importantly, they had never fought against humans who understood that the galaxy's most feared mercenary force had never learned to deal with enemies who refused to lose. "All units prepare for Phase 4 implementation," Rodriguez announced. "Let's show them what happens when they mess with Earth." The moment Commander Thexkar realized his mercenary guild was facing an enemy unlike anything they had encountered in 3 centuries of warfare came when his entire tactical network crashed simultaneously. Every command frequency, every biomechanical interface, every quantum-encrypted communication channel went dark in a cascade failure that should have been impossible. On the bridge of the Bone Render, Alarm indicators flashed across every display as Thexkar's biomechanical implants struggled to process the complete loss of connection to his ground forces. 3,000 soldiers, 12 assault cruisers, and the most sophisticated command and control system in the galaxy had been reduced to electronic silence by what the intelligence reports had described as primitive human technology. Status report. Thexkar demanded, his mandibles clicking in agitation as he tried to re-establish communication with any of his ground units. Subcommander Vectal's optical implants flickered frantically as he attempted to bypass the communication failure. Sir, all primary networks are down. Backup systems are not responding. I'm detecting massive electromagnetic interference from the planetary surface, but the energy signatures don't match any known weapon systems. How is that possible? Human technology is 3 centuries behind galactic standard. What Thexkar didn't know was that Lieutenant Commander Jessica Price had spent the last 6 hours systematically infiltrating every level of Korthak communication networks, planting logic bombs and feedback loops that would activate simultaneously when she triggered the final phase of her electronic warfare campaign. The viruses she had introduced weren't sophisticated by human standards. They were based on programming techniques that predated galactic contact by decades, but they were utterly alien to defensive systems that had never encountered Earth-based computer warfare. From her position in the data processing center, Price monitored the cascade failures spreading through Korthak systems with the satisfaction of a master craftsman watching years of preparation come to fruition. Rodriguez, this is Price. Enemy command and control is completely dark. They're operating blind. Copy that. Beginning final phase deployment. Throughout New Geneva, the Earth Special Operations Team implemented the culmination of their carefully planned campaign. Sergeant Rodriguez activated the last of his EMP devices, creating electromagnetic dead zones that would render Korthak biomechanical systems inoperable for a radius of several kilometers. Staff Sergeant Nakamura unleashed communication viruses that turned every Korthak transmitter into a source of electronic noise that jammed their own networks. Corporal Kim began systematic targeting of Korthak command personnel with tracking devices that would allow precise monitoring of enemy response patterns. But it was Technical Sergeant Lisa Park who delivered the psychological blow that would shatter Korthak confidence forever. From her position near the medical facility, Park deployed chemical compounds that had been specifically designed to target the biological components of Korthak enhancement systems. Unlike human biochemistry, Korthak physiology relied on synthetic neural pathways that could be disrupted by relatively simple chemical reactions. The aerosol dispersal system she activated would spread throughout the facility's ventilation network, carrying compounds that would temporarily sever the connection between Korthak soldiers and their biomechanical enhancements. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Dozens of Korthak soldiers found themselves trapped inside armor they could no longer control, their enhanced strength and speed replaced by the sluggish responses of unmodified biological systems. Weapons that had been extensions of their nervous systems became dead weight they could barely lift. Tactical networks that had provided instant battlefield awareness became sources of disorienting static that made coordinated action impossible. For a species that had relied on technological superiority for 3 centuries, the experience of technological helplessness was psychologically devastating. These were soldiers who had never lost a battle, never encountered an enemy they couldn't defeat through superior firepower and enhanced capabilities. Suddenly, they found themselves reduced to the level of primitive biological entities facing an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't communicate with, and couldn't defeat. Weekthon, the leader of Assault Unit 15, struggled to comprehend what was happening as his biomechanical systems failed one by one. The neural interfaces that connected his consciousness to advanced tactical networks went silent. The enhanced musculature that gave him 3 times normal strength became unresponsive, dead weight. The integrated weapon systems that had made him a one-man army became chunks of metal he could barely operate. Command, this is Unit 15, he transmitted through his suit's emergency communicator. We're experiencing total system failure. Request immediate extraction. The response was silence. Unknown to Wekthan, his transmission had been intercepted by Staff Sergeant Nakamura's electronic warfare systems and redirected into the communication virus network that was systematically destroying Korthak coordination capabilities. Every attempt at communication by Korthak ground forces was being turned into another vector for the electronic attack that had already neutralized their command structure. But the most demoralizing aspect of the human assault wasn't technological, it was tactical. As Korthak soldiers struggled with failing equipment and collapsed communication networks, they began to encounter evidence that their enemy had been watching them, studying them, and planning their defeat for hours before striking. Hidden cameras revealed detailed knowledge of Korthak deployment patterns. Intercepted communications showed that humans had been monitoring their private tactical discussions. Most disturbing of all, the precision of the human attack demonstrated a level of intelligence gathering that should have been impossible for a primitive colonial militia. From the underground command post, Colonel Janet Reynolds coordinated the final phase of the deception that had made the Earth Special Operations Team's mission possible. For hours, she had maintained the illusion of a defeated colonial militia, while human specialists systematically dismantled Korthak capabilities. Now, as alien forces found themselves blind, isolated, and technologically crippled, she authorized the revelation that would destroy the Korthak Guild's reputation forever. "All units, this is Reynolds," she transmitted on all frequencies. "The colonial militia is standing down. Earth Special Operations Command is assuming direct control of this engagement." The transmission was broadcast simultaneously through human communication networks and the hijacked Korthak tactical systems, ensuring that every soldier on both sides would understand that the battle they thought they had been fighting was an illusion. The Korthak hadn't been defeating a colonial militia. They had been systematically destroyed by Earth's most elite military specialists. On the bridge of the Bone Render, Commander Thexkar listened to the transmission with growing horror as he realized the implications of what he was hearing. "Earth Special Operations Command? That's impossible. Intelligence reported only colonial militia resistance." "Sir," Vectal reported, his optical implants finally managing to re-establish limited communication with the planet's surface, "I'm receiving scattered reports from ground units. They're reporting systematic equipment failure, complete communication breakdown, and... Sir, they're reporting that human forces appear to have detailed knowledge of all our tactical positions and operational procedures. How many humans are we facing? Unknown, sir. Our tactical assessment capabilities have been completely compromised, but the reports suggest a coordinated assault by forces with capabilities far beyond anything in our intelligence files." Thexkar's mandibles clicked in agitation as he processed the tactical disaster unfolding beneath him. 3,000 of the galaxy's most elite soldiers had been neutralized by an enemy that intelligence had dismissed as primitive colonials. The Korthak Guild's reputation for invincibility was crumbling in real time as reports continued to arrive describing technological capabilities that shouldn't exist and tactical coordination that defied every assumption about human military capacity. "Sir," Vectal continued, "I'm also receiving reports that our biomechanical systems are being systematically targeted by some form of directed electromagnetic attack. Our soldiers are reporting complete enhancement failure across multiple units." "That's impossible. Human technology can't penetrate our biomechanical integration systems." "Nevertheless, sir, over 60% of our ground forces are reporting equipment failure that has rendered their enhancements inoperable. They're requesting immediate extraction." The request for extraction was the final blow to Korthak confidence. For 3 centuries, the Guild had built its reputation on the principle that Korthak soldiers never retreated, never surrendered, and never requested extraction from any battlefield. The fact that elite soldiers were asking to be pulled out of combat against primitive humans represented a psychological defeat that would resonate throughout galactic military circles. But Thexkar's problems were about to get worse. Deep in the industrial sector of New Geneva, Sergeant Rodriguez was implementing the final demonstration of human military capability that would ensure the Korthak never underestimated Earth again. The explosive devices Rodriguez had positioned throughout the city weren't designed to cause casualties. They were designed to deliver a message. When they detonated simultaneously, the shaped charges created a pattern of destruction visible from orbit that spelled out a message in the ancient human language of Latin. "Molan Labe, come and take them." The historical reference was lost on Korthak forces, but the message was unmistakable. Humans weren't just defeating the galaxy's most feared mercenary force, they were taunting them while doing it. The psychological impact of realizing that their enemy had been confident enough in victory to to spend time on psychological warfare was devastating to soldiers who had never encountered organized resistance, much less mockery. All Korthak forces came a transmission on all frequencies in perfect Korthak dialect. This is Earth Special Operations Command. Your reputation for invincibility has been terminated. Your biomechanical systems have been neutralized. Your command and control networks have been compromised. You have been defeated by a force 1/10 your size using technology you consider primitive. You will withdraw from human territory immediately, or we will demonstrate additional capabilities that will make your current situation seem pleasant by comparison. The transmission was delivered in the calm, professional tone that human military specialists used when discussing routine operational matters. There was no anger, no triumph, no emotion at all. Just the matter-of-fact statement of a military force that had accomplished its objectives and was prepared to escalate if necessary. But the most psychologically damaging element of the transmission was its accuracy. Every detail about Korthak capabilities, every reference to their tactical doctrine, every assessment of their current situation was precisely correct. Whoever was speaking represented a military organization that had studied Korthak forces with the thoroughness of a scientific research project, and had developed countermeasures for every aspect of their operational capability. From his sniper position, Corporal Kim watched through his scope as Korthak soldiers began abandoning their positions and retreating toward extraction points. The withdrawal wasn't organized or tactical. It was the panicked flight of soldiers who had discovered that their technological superiority was an illusion, and their reputation for invincibility was a historical artifact. "Price, are you monitoring their internal communications?" Kim asked. "Affirmative. They're reporting total mission failure to their command structure. Individual units are requesting immediate extraction. I'm reading psychological profiles that indicate complete breakdown of unit cohesion. How long before they're completely off-planet? At current withdrawal rates, probably 4 hours. But Kim, you need to see this. I'm intercepting transmissions to other Korthak Guild units throughout the sector. They're warning every mercenary force in the galaxy to avoid contracts involving human territories. It was the outcome Earth's military planners had hoped for but hardly dared expect. The Korthak Guild wasn't just withdrawing from New Geneva, they were spreading the word throughout galactic military circles that humans represented a threat that conventional mercenary forces couldn't handle. The psychological victory was as important as the tactical one. Rodriguez to all units, came the final transmission of the operation. Mission accomplished. The Korthak Guild has been educated about human military capabilities. They won't be coming back. In the depths of space, other mercenary organizations monitoring the situation were drawing their own conclusions about the implications of Korthak failure. If the galaxy's most feared soldiers could be defeated by human forces, what did that say about human military capabilities? More importantly, what did it suggest about the wisdom of accepting contracts that involved challenging human territorial claims? The Earth Special Operations Team had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had ended a military conflict through superior tactics and psychological warfare without firing a shot in anger or inflicting a single casualty on enemy forces. The Korthak Guild would recover from their technological defeats, but they would never recover from the humiliation of being outfought by opponents they had dismissed as primitive. As the last Korthak ships lifted off from New Geneva's surface, the galaxy began to understand that humanity represented something new and dangerous in galactic politics, a species that could neutralize superior technology through superior tactics, and whose military forces operated according to principles that made conventional warfare obsolete. The Korthak had come to New Geneva expecting another routine contract. Instead, they had provided the galaxy with its first lesson in human military doctrine. Never underestimate an enemy that has spent millennia learning how to win impossible wars. 6 months after the New Geneva incident, as galactic historians would later call it, the ripple effects of humanity's victory over the Korthak Guild continued to reshape the political landscape of known space. Commander Thexkar stood in the unemployment queue at the Nexus Prime Labor Exchange, his biomechanical implants powered down to conserve energy, watching other former mercenaries compete for security positions that paid a fraction of what Korthak contracts used to provide. The guild had officially disbanded 3 weeks after the New Geneva operation. No amount of technological superiority could overcome the simple fact that potential clients no longer trusted Korthak forces to complete contracts involving human territories. Word had spread throughout galactic military circles that the most feared soldiers in known space had been defeated by 12 human specialists using primitive technology and unconventional tactics. Thexkar's mandibles clicked in bitter resignation as he reviewed the employment application for a cargo security position with a Vaxilian trading consortium, the same consortium that had hired the Korthak Guild to eliminate human presence on New Geneva. The irony wasn't lost on him that his potential employers were now specifically requesting guards with experience in human-style tactics and asymmetric warfare capabilities. Across the galaxy, military academies were scrambling to develop new curricula that addressed the tactical innovations demonstrated during the New Geneva operation. The Altarian War College had established an entire department dedicated to studying human military doctrine. The Zeltharian Defense University was requiring all students to complete coursework in primitive technology applications and unconventional warfare theory. Even the prestigious Imperial Military Institute on Centaurus Prime had added mandatory classes on psychological warfare and technological vulnerability assessment, but the most significant changes were occurring in the economic sector, where human territories were experiencing unprecedented growth in trade and diplomatic contact. The demonstration that Earth could defend its colonies against the galaxy's most elite mercenary force had transformed humanity from a minor frontier species into a power that demanded serious consideration in galactic politics. Ambassador Sarah Chen, recently promoted from her previous position as captain of the Earth Confederation Navy vessel Retribution, stood in the reception hall of the Galactic Trade Commission headquarters on Terminus Station, watching alien diplomats who 6 months ago would have ignored human representatives now compete for her attention with increasingly generous proposals for commercial partnerships. Ambassador Chen approached Trade Commissioner Vexnail, his reptilian features arranged in what passed for a diplomatic smile among his species. The consortium would like to discuss exclusive trading rights for human agricultural products. We're prepared to offer terms that reflect our new understanding of human capabilities. Chen smiled politely, her diplomatic training concealing the satisfaction she felt at seeing former adversaries treating humanity as equals rather than primitive upstarts. Commissioner, I appreciate the consortium's interest, but Earth's policy is to maintain open trade relationships with all qualified partners. We don't grant exclusive arrangements. Of course, Ambassador. Perhaps we could discuss preferential status? The consortium would be willing to provide significant technological transfers in exchange for preferred access to human markets. It was a conversation that would have been impossible before New Geneva. The offer of technological transfers represented an acknowledgement that human innovations in military applications might have civilian uses that advanced civilizations could benefit from. More importantly, it represented a fundamental shift in how the galaxy viewed human capabilities. Meanwhile, on Earth, the success of the New Geneva operation had triggered a massive expansion of humanity's military research programs. Deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, Dr. Elizabeth Morrison reviewed analysis reports on alien technologies captured during various diplomatic exchanges, technologies that were being reverse-engineered and improved using the same innovative approaches that had neutralized Korthak forces. The electromagnetic pulse systems we developed for the New Geneva operation have applications far beyond military use, Morrison explained to the assembled representatives from Earth's major governments. We can adapt the technology for medical applications, communication systems, even space propulsion. The aliens spent centuries perfecting biomechanical integration, but they never considered how vulnerable it would be to directed electromagnetic interference. General Patricia Williams, director of Earth Defense Command, nodded approvingly. What about our other innovations? Can we expand on the electronic warfare capabilities?
Absolutely.
Lieutenant Commander Price's work on alien communication networks revealed fundamental vulnerabilities in galactic information systems. We can develop cybersecurity technologies that are generations ahead of anything the galaxy currently uses. More importantly, we can create offensive capabilities that alien civilizations won't be able to defend against until they completely rebuild their information infrastructure. The meeting continued for hours, covering technological innovations that would ensure humanity remained ahead of any potential threats, while providing commercial advantages that would accelerate Earth's integration into galactic civilization. But the most important development wasn't technological, it was psychological. The galaxy had learned to fear human military capabilities, but more importantly, it had learned to respect human innovation and adaptability. Species that had been manipulating technology for millennia were discovering that humans approached problems from perspectives that had never occurred to them. The same creative thinking that had neutralized Korthak biomechanical systems was being applied to challenges in medicine, engineering, communications, and dozens of other fields. On the colony world of New Geneva, now officially designated as humanity's first major victory in galactic warfare, Colonel Janet Reynolds supervised the construction of the memorial that would commemorate the operation. The monument wasn't designed to celebrate military victory. It was intended to remind future generations that superior technology meant nothing against superior tactics and determination. "The inscription is complete, Colonel," reported the construction supervisor. "Would you like to review it before the dedication ceremony?" Reynolds read the words carved in both human languages and galactic standard script. "In memory of those who taught the galaxy that reputation is earned through deed, not declaration. Here, 12 humans demonstrated that the impossible is merely another word for untested. May all who read this remember that victory belongs not to the strong, but to those who refuse to accept defeat." The memorial would become a pilgrimage site for military officers from across the galaxy, all seeking to understand how human forces had accomplished what conventional military doctrine said was impossible. But the real monument to human capability wasn't carved in stone. It was written in the changed behavior of every alien civilization that now approached humanity with respect rather than condescension. In the depths of space, merchant vessels that previously would have ignored human territorial claims now requested permission before entering Earth-controlled systems. Pirate organizations that had viewed human colonies as easy targets now specifically avoided human shipping lanes. Most importantly, military contractors throughout the galaxy had stopped accepting contracts that involved challenging human territorial integrity. The Korthak Guild's failure had created a reputation vacuum that no other mercenary organization was willing to fill. The risk of suffering the same humiliation that had destroyed the galaxy's most feared soldiers was too great for any rational military contractor to accept. Human space had become effectively immune to mercenary interference, protected not by superior firepower but by the galaxy's terror of encountering human military specialists operating according to doctrine that conventional forces couldn't counter. But perhaps the most significant change was occurring in Earth's educational institutions, where military academies were developing new training programs designed to produce officers capable of conducting warfare against technologically superior opponents. The Special Operations Training Center at Fort Bragg had become a destination for exchange students from allied alien civilizations, all seeking to understand human approaches to tactical innovation and asymmetric warfare. Captain Marcus Rodriguez, recently promoted and assigned to train the next generation of human special forces, stood before a class that included not only Earth's finest military candidates, but also exchange students from 12 different alien species. "Today we're going to discuss the fundamental principle that made the New Geneva operation possible," he began. "The enemy always gets a vote in how the battle unfolds. Your job is to make sure they vote for your victory." The alien students took careful notes, struggling to understand military doctrine that emphasized adaptability over technology and innovation over established procedure. For species that had perfected warfare through technological advancement, the concept of deliberately choosing inferior equipment in order to exploit enemy assumptions was revolutionary. "Sir," asked a Zeltharian cadet, "human forces deliberately used primitive technology against the Korthak. How could you be confident that inferior systems would prove superior?" Rodriguez smiled. "We weren't using inferior systems. We were using appropriate systems. The Korthak expected to face energy weapons, so we used kinetic weapons. They expected formal battle lines, so we used asymmetric tactics. They expected predictable responses, so we gave them chaos. Technology isn't superior or inferior, it's appropriate or inappropriate for the specific tactical situation." The lesson continued. covering principles of warfare that human military forces had been developing for centuries, but that represented completely new approaches to galactic civilizations that had relied on technological superiority rather than tactical innovation. By the time the class concluded, the alien students had been introduced to concepts that would revolutionize their understanding of military strategy. But the most important lesson wasn't being taught in classrooms. It was being demonstrated through humanity's continued expansion and prosperity in galactic civilization. Every successful human colony, every profitable trade relationship, every diplomatic achievement reinforced the galaxy's understanding that Earth represented something new and valuable in galactic politics. 6 months after 12 human specialists had humiliated the Korthak Guild, humanity had established itself as a major power in galactic affairs. Not through conquest or technological superiority, but through the demonstration that human approaches to problem-solving could overcome challenges that conventional methods couldn't address. The galaxy had learned to respect human military capabilities, but more importantly, it had learned to value human innovation, adaptability, and determination. Species that had been stagnating for centuries were discovering new approaches to ancient problems through contact with human researchers, engineers, and philosophers. As Ambassador Chen concluded another successful trade negotiation with the Altarian Republic, she reflected on how completely the New Geneva operation had transformed humanity's place in galactic civilization. What had begun as a rescue mission for a threatened colony had become the foundation for Earth's emergence as a galactic power. The Korthak Guild had expected to complete another routine contract. Instead, they had provided the galaxy with its first comprehensive demonstration of human capabilities. They had come to New Geneva seeking easy money, and had instead delivered a lesson in human military doctrine that would be studied for generations. Most importantly, they had learned that reputation, once lost, could never be fully recovered. The guild that had once been the galaxy's most feared military force was now remembered primarily as the organization that had been destroyed by 12 humans using primitive technology and unconventional tactics. The galaxy had a new understanding of what it meant to face human opposition. It wasn't about technology or numbers or firepower. It was about facing an enemy that refused to accept the possibility of defeat and possessed the creativity to turn any disadvantage into an opportunity for victory. As the memorial on New Geneva would remind future generations, the impossible was merely another word for untested, and humanity, as the galaxy had learned, specialized in testing the impossible until it became inevitable.